So while I was recording the episode, I noticed that Cthulhu doesn't sit perfectly centered in his room, and now I can't unsee it. Alrighty, it's the second part to last month's AQ20 video. This month we're doing AQ40, and it's pretty much the simplest exploration in the game. All you have to do is stand where I'm standing, double jump, and then use Vengeful Retreat to flip backwards out the window behind us. Then just jump out the window, and congratulations, you've escaped AQ40. You may recognize this area as one of the sections of a map we explored last month in AQ20. Now, this is because a lot of the city's architecture was copied between AQ20 and AQ40. However, as we head outward away from the city, you'll start to see how stuff drastically changes between the two instances. The first big difference is that in AQ40, the chamber is surrounded by a large invisible wall. You'll see the camera snap forward as I walk through it. Once through this wall, there's no way to get back into Cthulhu's chamber. But continuing onward takes us outside the entrance portal to the raid. And now, a fun piece of WoW trivia. Despite the majority of Silphid and Ahn'Qiraj being defeated during the events of Vanilla, players returned to the zone during the Cataclysm pre-patch, when the Elemental Lord Prince Azeroth rallied the remaining Silphid to attack Stormwind and Thunder Bluff. Reaching the top of the stairs, we can see we're standing at the opposite side of the instance portal where players first enter the raid. Obviously, don't get too close or you'll be teleported back out. And now another fun piece of WoW trivia. It took me 16 takes to say Prince Azeroth correctly. Once at the bottom of the stairs, double jump and fell rush to get across the gap. Unlike in AQ20, the sections of Silphus beyond this corridor haven't been mapped because they're not visible from the raid's entrance. Now, let's head towards that ominous untextured cylinder in the distance. This run normally takes over a minute, but I've sped it up considerably because it kinda makes for a boring video. The sandy mound that you just saw up here ahead of us is actually part of a large system of tunnels that makes up Ahn'Qiraj. The tunnels stretch outwards underneath the section of the map covered by the gray, untextured terrain. Getting close to one of these mounds causes your camera to display only the tunnel system. As we head closer to the large cylinder, the shadows on our screen begin to act strangely. It appears as if the vertical shadows on the cylinder mirror themselves on the ground. During certain times of day, the ground will begin to strobe wildly as you face into the sun. I decided to leave that part out of the video because I didn't want to risk causing seizures. You can see the screen flash momentarily here, but at the right times of day, the entire screen will rapidly flash black and white. Looping back around, we can see just how small a portion of the city is actually inside the raid. This is because the only outside portions are seen from the entrance of a raid and through Cthulhu's window. And of course, the developers needed any additional space to design the tunnel system underground. In 2006, Ahn'Qiraj was also home to one of the first scandals in WoW raiding. As you may or may not know, the layout of Ahn'Qiraj is a gigantic circle, and Cthulhu's platform is actually very close to being directly beneath the first boss. After Naxxramas opened, most gear in Ahn'Qiraj wasn't worth farming, but Cthulhu still dropped gear that was useful to raiding guilds. Because of this, many competitive guilds trying to get an advantage would still clear Ahn'Qiraj every week just to get loot off of Cthulhu. Overrated, one of the top US guilds at the time, was frustrated with how long they were spending in Ahn'Qiraj each week when all they wanted was loot off of the last boss. One of the guild's members came up with a solution. Back in Vanilla, much more of the game's data was held on personal computers rather than the game's servers. And the guild realized that by installing a mod that disabled one of the game's files, it removed one of the walls from Ahn'Qiraj. This allowed them to simply walk underneath Ahn'Qiraj and drop down into Cthulhu's chamber, saving them hours of time they would have spent clearing the raid. Unfortunately, Blizzard wasn't a huge fan of people editing their game files to skip large portions of their content. The guild's defense of, well, it wasn't current content, proved insufficient, and the guild was banned permanently. The guild's fate is especially ironic because there's actually a method to skip directly to Cthulhu without editing the game's files, although I won't be showing it in this video since it goes against my principles of showcasing explorations that can give players an advantage. Even an advantage in a raid that's over 10 years old. Back to the topic of exploration, you can see that a small portion of the surrounding terrain has been copied into the instance. This was intended so that players would think they were seeing Silphus on the horizon, no matter what section of the outdoor area of the raid they were standing in. Put simply, there's less outdoor terrain in AQ40 because you're outside for less of AQ40. And don't worry, I am fully aware of how stupid and self-explanatory that explanation sounds. Also, for the record, the reason I haven't been saying use Fell Rush here, double jump here, and everything this episode is I kind of trust that at this point you guys know what the various Demon Hunter abilities are. I mean, if there's a big overwhelming groundswell of I don't know how to get up this hill, I can go back to doing it, but I mean, except for a really complex exploration, I think you guys got most of this stuff. Anyway, for old time's sake, use Metamorphosis to get up this hill. And from up here, we can take a look at the various structures on the outskirts of a raid. Like in AQ20, these buildings are only ever designed to be viewed over the tops of walls, so most of them don't have bottoms that connect to the ground. You can see that we have the same sort of hollow floating architecture that we had in AQ20. Heading back to the main raid area, we can see just how wide the invisible wall that extends outside C'Thun's chamber is, since we're about to run into one of the sides of it. So, this is one edge of the invisible wall, and as you can see, it's several hundred feet away from the building. We've just rounded one of the corners, and in a moment we're going to run into another one of the walls. Here, we can see me fail miserably to make this jump, and then attempt to disguise my failure as an opportunity to show where the invisible walls are. Now, let's watch me mount up and take the path of shame for those who weren't able to jump over the wall. If you couldn't make the far more stylish original jump, here's a secondary outlet. From here, we can run along the outskirts of the city and head towards the Silithid hide that we saw at the start of the video. As you can see, even the desert terrain directly outside the raid has been flattened, most likely so that it doesn't intersect with a system of tunnels that runs underneath it. Heading towards the Karaji hive sticking out of the ground, various parts of it snap into and out of visibility as we move towards it. The ground in this section is missing to create the appearance that this section of the tunnel is uncovered, so that as players run through it, they can look up and see the sun above them. Given that most ground textures in WoW are only visible from above, I'm not sure why they cut a hole here, although my best guess is that it has something to do with wanting sunlight to filter naturally into the tunnel. Moving around, we can see various sections of the tunnel system extend in either direction. We can even see trash mobs wandering back and forth. Of course, the only way to see how this chasm looks from within is to jump into it. Gliding down allows us to bypass the normal invisible barriers and get to a higher section of a wall. Looking behind us, we can see how the sand waterfall and interior sections of a wall make it look like we're sunken inside a sand dune, even when we've just seen the reality of what's really outside. Ahn'Qiraj 40 is an interesting look at what's really going on upstairs in one of the most famous instances in WoW, and whether you're an avid explorer, or you're just trying to style on Overrated for still being able to log in, the Temple of Ahn'Qiraj is well worth a visit. And as always, thanks for watching.